apologize for not having a peanut, but the South Padre Island coast was too crazy.
Ladies and gentlemen, anything I can do? I miss the shore here. I'll clean out my cigar. I'm the executive producer.
Was on, it was on Today's Show.
Was it the Today Show
Today's Show, and
2020?
may have been another one, I forgot.
There was something else besides the Today Show, and the reason I know that is because I was at work, and I wouldn't have been at work during the Today Show. But it was fascinating, just fascinating. Yeah.
It's gotten extraordinary results. I'm just amazed because it's. I'll tell you about it.
Yeah, okay. All right, we're ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Rolling?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Mr. Stern, welcome to Dallas. It's a pleasure having you here and having this chance to talk with you. Of course, your film has not been in our area yet, so I haven't seen it, but
I understand it's coming here very shortly, but I think they've taken advantage of this meeting of the American Symphony Orchestra League because so many of the managers have heard about it, and many old friends there. And as it has to do with music, many of them look at it with several kinds of eyes, to see the film itself and see how it can be used sometimes in the efforts of the orchestras. But it's nice to be back in Dallas again. I haven't been here for about, I think, a year and a half.
you are going to address the convention while you are here, and what one or two thoughts will you try to leave with them?
Well, contrary to the habit of most accomplished speakers, I don't write my speeches in advance, as one can easily tell when one listens to me. I like to speak spontaneously, and I think it gives me an opportunity to test what concerns the people. I don't like to lecture to them as to what they should think, but I'm interested in what troubles them. And I think everybody has one overriding concern now. What is the policy of the present administration towards the arts? How will it affect the arts, and what place can the arts play in the immediate future, considering all the prognostications in Washington? I would perhaps speak to that point to the best of my ability and try to suggest how to accept, what to think of what has been said, rather than to plan in advance various doleful funeral processions. I don't believe in that. I think there should be a positive viewpoint. I think there are reasons to think constructively, and I think the only way to be useful is to be constructive.
Mr. Stern, if you could talk with President Reagan, what would you say to him, and what questions would you ask him?
Were I to speak with the president, I would say to him that, considering the fact that he truly has been effective in having the people of the United States begin to have a renewed faith in themselves, and that he believes deeply, and I think very honestly, in an American viewpoint, an American way of life, and he believes that the quality of life is important, then it follows that the culture of the United States is very deeply rooted to the quality of life in the United States. And it's not a separate function, it's not a social adornment, it is basic to it. And therefore it follows precisely the line that he has taken as the president in telling the people what he dreams of, what he hopes for. and that amongst those hopes and amongst the most powerful weapons that he can command as president is the incredible pool of talent and ability that this country possesses. A pool of talent that can represent this country at all levels, in all circumstances around the world, in the proudest possible way.
Mr. Stern, there are some people who could make a case, I suppose, about your going to China, saying, why would a man of his stature go to China to help those people when so many musicians in this country need help? You're laughing.
It sounds so silly. I didn't go there to help the people. I went there to say hello to them, to meet them. I didn't help them particularly. All I did was talk with them. I went there at the invitation, the personal invitation of the foreign minister. I was not invited to be a soloist. I was not invited there as a teacher. I was invited with my family to pay a visit, to see the country. It is a fabulous place with an ancient history, a wonderfully gifted mass of humanity that has an ancient and honorable culture of its own. It also has enormous gifts. It has enormous gifts in its young people for the culture of the West. It wants to make an opening to the West. It is obviously in everybody's interest that these factors be recognized. I was there for all of 3 weeks to make this a great big crusade of some kind. It's so silly, it's not even, it's nonsense. It was marvelous to meet with those people. It was wonderful to see the young people. It was wonderful to meet with the older people who remembered their acquaintance with Western influences. They have a deep culture which, however, is built on a one-to-one relationship because that was the way society was in those days. Now you have to have things which reach out to many people. We live in a different time. The only cultural apparatus that reaches to many people from a single source is the Western culture. Therefore, they're interested in Western culture, and they have gifted people with which to do it. The more that we can meet them and understand them on these terms, the better it will be for all concerned. I am not living in China, I'm living in the United States. And I was there and I heard about 20, 30, 40 young people. I've heard probably 300 or 400 in the last couple of years in the United States. The idea of why going there to help, I didn't. I went there on a visit, on a trip. Being a professional fiddle player, I took my little fiddle along. The best way to meet anybody is to play your fiddle. You do what you do well. And when you do what you do well, you look at other people in the same profession, you get to know the other people, because by the professional recognition, you get to know them far more quickly. They can't dissimulate, and they can't fool around or fake, and as they might in other forms. Therefore, you take your key out, and they take their keys out. You take out your apple, they take out their apple, and you sit down, you have lunch together. That's the whole thing.
How long do you think it will be, Mr. Stern? Will it be 1 generation, 2 generations before their young musicians will be on a par with our young musicians?
Very hard to answer. That depends on how quickly China prepares a fertile ground, an area in which these young people can perform. In other words, if there are many concert courses, series, if there are orchestras, if the regular public is developed, if a whole groundswell of general involvement, of people's involvement in musical events will take place, in which their performers can take part, it will happen quite quickly because they are very hardworking, they're very intelligent, they're very gifted. That will depend entirely on how far their total society goes towards the necessary physical ambience in which musical performances must occur, must take place, and an environment in which both professors and students and their families can live honorably and happily in their society.
So, I guess to sum it up then, it could be a short time.
It could be in a generation or two, yes.
Mr. Stern, thank you very much for talking
You're
with
very
us.
welcome.
Most enjoyable interview. Thank you,
You're
sir.
very welcome.
Give him 2 shots.
I just love your. I just loved it because I have heard people not saying it in a nasty way, but saying, "I wonder why he's over there helping those people." You know? You've heard it too.
No.
Oh, haven't
That's
you
the
heard
first
it?
time I heard that.
Oh. Well, I've just heard people, sort of wondering about it.
I just wonder at the kind of minds of people who ask that kind of a question.
Well, I think they just see little snippets, like they saw that little snippet on television, maybe.
All right, well, because it was interesting to speak with and to hear this kind of reaction in the first place. It was surprising to me. You asked good questions. May I congratulate you? It was very nice of you. And I hope that you get enough to run more than 2 minutes and 47 seconds of this after they get it snipped out. And that all of what we said, this doesn't come out sounding as if it was backwards. And if you ever want to climb the Great Wall of China, please be my guest, but do it slowly and get some low walking shoes. It's a long way and it gets very hot, and you have to make sure you're putting some good, sturdy feet to get up there.
Okay. Now, Bob, you ready for
Okay, go,
Mr. Stern, if you could talk with President Reagan about his funding plans for the arts, what would you say to him and what would you ask him?
Слушай, дорогой мой, я не хочу тебе сказать, но это совсем невозможно, что ты делаешь, когда ты председатель,
Nashmaj kapop, whatever that looks like. All right, another question then. Okay. Mr. Stern, there could be some people who would make a case saying that why would you go to Russia to help those young people, those young musicians over there, when we have so many young musicians here who need to be helped?
Because I'm pessimistic about the Russians and optimistic about the Chinese. That's right. And I think it's a perfectly logical question.
Okay, all right. How long do you think it will take the young Chinese musicians to catch up with our young musicians? Will it be a generation or two, or perhaps even longer?
Approximately. I think that you've got the right answer in that case. I think so. Absolutely.